On the morning of May 1st, 1893, in Chicago, Illinois, a photographer named Charles Dudley Arnold positioned his camera before something that should not have existed. The Exposition grounds stretched before him in the pale spring light, white buildings rising from what had been swampland only 24 months earlier. His assignment was routine documentation, yet the glass plate negative he exposed that morning captured details that official records would later contradict. The photograph shows electrical conduits running beneath marble walkways, their gauge and configuration suggesting power loads that the era's generating capacity could not have supported. A handwritten notation on the archive envelope, added in different ink decades later, reads simply, "Verify construction timeline, discrepancy noted." The fair was called the World's Columbian Exposition, commemorating 400 years since Columbus reached the Americas, though it opened a year late. Official histories describe it as a celebration of progress, a showcase of contemporary achievement built rapidly through modern construction techniques. Yet scattered through archives from Boston to San Francisco, documents tell a different story. Invoices for materials delivered before ground was broken. Send photographs showing completed structures dated months before construction supposedly began. A Chicago Tribune article from October 1892 describing buildings as nearly finished when official records claim they were still being designed. The weather that spring was unseasonably cold. Workers arriving at the site each morning found frost coating the white plaster facades, making them gleam like genuine marble in the dawn light. The buildings were temporary, designed to last only the fair's 6-month duration, yet their scale suggested permanence. The Manufactures and Liberal Arts Building covered 44 acres beneath a single roof. It's larger than any enclosed structure yet built. Its interior volume exceeded that of the Great Pyramid of Giza, the Capitol Building, Winchester Cathedral, and Madison Square Garden combined. The official explanation claimed innovative steel framing allowed such spans, but the steel requisition records show tonnage insufficient for the documented dimensions. Something else supported that vast ceiling. Inside the archive of the Chicago Historical Society, a ledger from the World's Columbian Exposition Corporation lists daily workforce counts. The numbers plateau in June 1891, hovering around 14,000 workers. Then on September 17, 1891, the count drops to 800 and remains stable through the fair's opening in May 1893. No explanation accompanies the reduction. Cross-referencing with payroll records shows continued full payment of 14,000 wages, but time cards exist for fewer than 1,000 individuals. The money flowed somewhere, documented in meticulous accounting that reveals nothing about where it went or what work it funded. By the evening of May 1st, 1893, electric lights illuminated the Exposition grounds. Contemporary newspapers called it unprecedented, in a city within a city glowing against the darkness of Lake Michigan. The dynamos supplying this power sat in the machinery hall, their combined output rated at 15,000 horsepower. Engineers from Westinghouse and General Electric supervised the installation, introducing alternating current systems that would become standard worldwide. Yet photographs of the dynamo room show equipment that does not match surviving technical specifications. The housings are larger, the configurations different, and in one image taken from an unusual angle, the shadow of a cylindrical apparatus appears that exists in no inventory. A visitor named Elias Burton wrote in his diary on May 3, 1893, about walking through the fair after sunset. "The electric lights produce an effect beyond mere illumination," he noted. "Standing in the court of honor, one feels a subtle vibration, as though the air itself trembles." Several visitors mentioned feeling drowsy or unusually alert depending on their location within the grounds. The current flows through channels we cannot see, and its effects may exceed its visible purpose. Burton was a telegraph engineer, is trained to observe electrical phenomena. His technical observations fill 17 pages, describing measurements he took with portable instruments smuggled past fair security. The readings suggested field strengths impossible with the documented power generation. Construction photographs present another puzzle. The official timeline claims the major buildings rose between August 1891 and April 1893. Yet a photograph dated March 10, 1891, shows the administration building's dome complete and covered in scaffolding being removed. The image appears in a private collection donated to the Library of Congress in 1952, its provenance traced to a construction supervisor's estate. Yet when researchers noted the date discrepancy in 1978, the photograph was reclassified as possibly mislabeled and moved to restricted storage. A microfilm copy survives, the date clearly visible in the photographer's handwriting along the negative's edge. The White City, as the fairgrounds became known, covered 690 acres. Its buildings surrounded a central lagoon fed by Lake Michigan, the water system incorporating fountains, channels, and the world's first moving sidewalk. Hydraulic pumps circulated thousands of gallons per minute, powered by the same electrical system that ran the lights. A municipal engineer visiting from Pittsburgh noted in his report that the water circulation system seemed to do more than move water. The lagoon level remains precisely constant regardless of rain or evaporation, he wrote. Gates and valves appear at regular intervals, their purpose unexplained by fair officials. When I inquired, I was told they served aesthetic purposes, but their mechanisms suggest different functions. On the night of October 28, 1893, the fair closed its gates for the final time. 27 million visitors had passed through since May, making it the most attended event in American history to that date. The building stood empty for 3 weeks while Exposition officials cataloged equipment and prepared for demolition. During this period, witnesses reported strange occurrences. Night watchmen spoke of lights appearing in buildings with no power connections. Sounds like machinery running came from sealed structures. A police report dated November 14th describes investigating the electricity building after reports of unusual activity, but the responding officers found only empty rooms and disconnected equipment. And their report notes in an oppressive atmosphere that made sustained presence difficult. Demolition began on November 20th, 1893, proceeding with unusual haste. The contract specified systematic deconstruction, salvaging materials for reuse. Instead, workers described being told to simply tear everything down as quickly as possible. The White City's plaster facades concealed steel frameworks that should have been valuable, yet most went directly to smelters. A foreman named James Harwick wrote to his brother about the demolition. "They want it gone, not salvaged. Gone. We work night shifts with electric lights powered from somewhere. The fair's generators are already dismantled. Yesterday we found rooms in the manufacturer's building with no doors, spaces that shouldn't exist according to the plans. They were empty, but showed signs of recent occupation. We sealed them and kept working." By January 1894, most of the White City had vanished. Photographs from that month show only rubble and vacant land where buildings had stood. The speed troubles witnesses who documented it. As a structure covering 44 acres, rising 200 feet high, reduced to cleared ground in 6 weeks. The mathematics suggests impossibility. Even with explosives and hundreds of workers, the debris volume alone should have required months to remove. Yet invoices show minimal dump fees, and railway records list no unusual freight. The materials simply disappeared, processed somehow on site into forms that left no trace. The Palace of Fine Arts survived, converted into the Field Museum of Natural History. Its transformation required extensive renovation, replacing temporary construction with permanent materials. During this work in 1894, construction crews discovered features that puzzled them. Behind walls, they found cable runs with no apparent purpose, leading to empty spaces that the fair's plans showed as solid structure. Ventilation shafts connected rooms vertically in patterns, suggesting purposes beyond air circulation. A contractor's report notes evidence of removed equipment, attachment points, and wear patterns indicating machinery of substantial size, though no records show such installations. In the archive of the Newberry Library, a folder of correspondence between Daniel Burnham, the fair's chief architect, and Frederick Law Olmsted, its landscape designer, contains a curious gap. Letters exist dated through September 1891, then resume in June 1892. 9 months of what should be the most intensive planning period produce no surviving correspondence. A cataloging note from 1924 mentions water damage requiring disposal of materials from late 1891 through early 1892, though other documents from the same period and location show no such damage. The gap sits like a missing tooth, noticeable precisely because the record is otherwise complete. Tesla attended the fair as a Westinghouse consultant, demonstrating alternating current systems and giving lectures on electrical theory. His notebook from that period, preserved at the Tesla Museum in Belgrade, contains sketches that don't match his public demonstrations. They show large geometric configurations, labeled standing wave measurements, and Earth resonance capture. Calculations fill the margins, working through equations for power transmission without wires. One page dated August 15, 1893, shows the administration building's dome, with notes about enhanced reception at elevated point. Is confirmation of principle. Tesla never publicly discussed these observations, and later references to the fair focus solely on his AC motor demonstrations. Fire destroyed much of the remaining fairgrounds on July 5, 1894. The Palace of Fine Arts survived, but most other standing structures burned in a blaze that started simultaneously in multiple locations. Fire investigators noted the improbability of such coordination arising from accident, but arson charges were never filed. A firefighter's testimony mentions an unusual quality to the smoke, be a chemical rather than typical wood and plaster fumes. Several firefighters reported brief illness after the fire, symptoms described as disorientation and fatigue lasting several days. The Chicago Fire Department's final report concludes, cause undetermined, multiple points of origin. By autumn 1894, the site had been cleared and returned to parkland. Jackson Park emerged from the transformation, its lagoons and pathways preserving the fair's basic layout, but erasing all trace of the structures that had occupied it. Photographs from 1895 show pastoral landscapes, walking paths, and scattered monuments, nothing suggesting the scale of what had stood there just 2 years earlier. The speed of this amnesia troubles the historical record. A city-transforming event witnessed by millions became a memory, then a legend, its physical evidence methodically erased. Academic papers from the period immediately following the fair discuss its technological achievements, particularly in electrical systems and architectural engineering. Yet these discussions remain oddly superficial, describing what visitors saw rather than how systems functioned. The technical specifications appear in general terms: powerful generators, innovative electrical distribution, advanced construction methods. When one engineering professor attempted a detailed technical analysis in 1896, examining actual equipment and construction records, his paper was rejected by multiple journals as too speculative. His notes survive in his personal papers, filled with questions about discrepancies between observed capabilities and documented designs. A patent filed in 1895 by a former fair electrician describes a method for wireless power distribution using earth resonance. The application includes diagrams that closely resemble the fair's central court of honor, with notations about optimal geometric arrangement for field generation. The Patent Office rejected it as theoretically unsound. Though the examiner's notes reveal uncertainty, the applicant's credentials are legitimate, and his experience at the Columbian Exposition lends weight to his claims. However, the described effects violate accepted principles. Recommend rejection pending theoretical validation. The electrician, John Morrison, never reapplied. He died in 1903, his obituary mentioning his exposition work, but nothing about his later research. Visitors' accounts provide fragments of experience that official histories omit. A letter from Margaret Ashton to her sister, dated June 12, 1893, describes feeling peculiarly energized after spending afternoons at the fair. I require less sleep than usual, and my thoughts seem unusually clear and focused. Others mention similar effects. We joke about the electricity in the air, but perhaps it is not entirely metaphorical. The building seemed to hum at frequencies just below hearing. She visited 47 times between May and October, keeping detailed notes that her descendants donated to Northwestern University in 1967. The notes document systematic patterns in her observations, noting correlations between building locations, times of day, and the effects she experienced. Yet the Ferris wheel stood as the fair's engineering marvel, rising 264 feet and carrying over 2,000 passengers and 36 cars. Its construction required advanced metallurgy and precision engineering, achievements properly celebrated at the time. Yet the wheel's foundations went deeper than structural necessity demanded. Excavation photographs show pilings extending 40 feet below grade, anchored in bedrock through clay soil that could have supported the weight at shallower depths. The plans show chambers at the base, described as maintenance access, but their dimensions and configuration suggest other purposes. They were filled with concrete during demolition. and sealed without documentation of what they contained. By 1900, the fair had receded into comfortable nostalgia. Books celebrated it as America's coming of age, the moment the nation announced itself as an industrial power. Photographs preserved its visual splendor, carefully selected images showing monumental architecture and modern machinery. What they show less often are the mysterious aspects, the cable runs leading nowhere, the unexplained chambers, the equipment that matched no inventories. These details survived in scattered archives, footnotes to triumphant narratives, waiting for investigators who might notice contradictions. A geological survey from 1910 mapped Chicago's underground infrastructure, charting water mains, gas lines, electrical conduits, and transportation tunnels. In Jackson Park, the survey noted anomalies suggesting previous construction, purpose uncertain. The surveyors found voids and channels that matched no city records, running in geometric patterns beneath where the fair had stood. Their report recommended investigation, but funding never materialized. The anomalies remain mapped but unexplained, and incorporated into city planning as areas to avoid during construction. In 1933, Chicago hosted another World's Fair, the Century of Progress Exposition. Planners explicitly referenced the Columbian Exposition, claiming to honor its legacy while demonstrating 40 years of advancement. Yet veterans of the 1893 fair, interviewed about their memories, often expressed confusion about the comparison. It was different then, an electrician named Robert Hayes said in a 1932 Tribune interview. I worked on both fairs, and the new one is impressive. Well, certainly, but in 1893, we were doing things I still don't entirely understand. The power systems, the way buildings seemed to interact with each other. It felt like being part of something larger than an exhibition. Asked to elaborate, Hayes became vague, mentioning non-disclosure agreements signed during his employment. Some things were confidential then and remain so now, he said. Oh, I can say only that we built more than we showed. The 1933 fair's electrical systems used conventional technology, well documented and explained in promotional materials. Its buildings stood on standard foundations, rose through understood structural principles, and operated via familiar mechanisms. Nothing mysterious troubled its operation or demolition. When it closed in 1934, deconstruction proceeded normally, materials salvaged and reused according to standard practice. The site became parkland without drama or unexplained urgency. The contrast highlights 1893's peculiarities, yet the elements that made it exceptional rather than merely impressive. Modern researchers examining the Columbian Exposition face systematic gaps in the record. Construction documentation exists but remains incomplete. Electrical specifications survive but don't match observed capabilities. Photographic evidence shows details contradicting official timelines. Financial records document payments for undescribed purposes. Witness testimony describes experiences that official histories ignore. The pattern suggests not accidental loss, but deliberate obscuring, a careful editing of the historical record to show achievement while hiding method. In 2003, a construction project in Jackson Park's underground utilities encountered one of the anomalies mapped in 1910. Workers found a concrete-filled chamber 30 feet below grade, its walls showing tool marks and attachment points for removed equipment. Carbon dating of organic material in the concrete suggested sealing around 1894. The chamber's geometry matched nothing in city records, its purpose remaining unclear. Project engineers photographed it, took measurements, and sealed it again. Their report entered city archives, joining decades of similar findings that accumulate without resolution. Today, Jackson Park appears on city maps as public parkland, its lagoons and pathways serving recreational purposes. Joggers and cyclists pass daily over ground that once supported the largest enclosed building ever constructed. The Museum of Science and Industry occupies the old Palace of Fine Arts. Its exhibits teaching principles of physics and engineering. Visitors learn about electricity and power generation through interactive displays, tracing the technology's development from early generators to modern grids. The explanations are clear, well-documented, and carefully complete. Yet in the museum's archive, accessible to researchers by appointment, boxes contain materials from the Columbian Exposition. Construction photographs show details that raise questions. Equipment manifests list items that don't appear in fair inventories. Visitor testimonies describe effects beyond standard electrical phenomena. The materials sit in acid-free folders, properly cataloged and preserved, waiting for investigators who might notice what official histories exclude. The White City lasted 6 months, drawing millions to witness what was called the future. Then it was demolished with a thoroughness that suggests purpose beyond mere cleanup. Yes, the technology demonstrated there became standard: AC power, electrical lighting, advanced construction methods, while other aspects vanished completely. What remained were carefully selected memories, approved narratives, and questions preserved in archival fragments for those interested in contradictions. If history is written by survivors, perhaps demolition is performed by those with something to erase. The Columbian Exposition of 1893 showcased achievement and concealed method, demonstrated capability and hid mechanism. Its buildings rose impossibly fast and vanished with suspicious speed, whilst what they contained during those 6 months remains a matter of scattered evidence and careful omission. The fair ended, the White City fell, and the questions it raised were buried with its foundations, still there beneath the parkland, waiting in the gaps between what was shown and what was done.